Poddin My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Poddin My Noggin. I'm your host, as always, CK Sims. I never change. You're always stuck with me. Today, we are joined by a guest, an author, many accolades, actually, and really interesting person that I'm excited about talking to, Ms. Elizabeth Bruckner. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. Elizabeth Bruckner is completely fine. But anyway, so welcome to the show.
Thank you. Welcome. There, now we've both blundered. It's perfect. Thank you for having me, CK. I'm really grateful to be here.
Well, I am grateful. You sent me a copy of your book. Let me make sure that people can see it. It's very beautiful. The Homesteader Mindset. Now, I just want to make a call out to anybody that's watching or listening, and then just put a wall up. Because you see the word homesteader and you might just automatically put a wall up and be like, nah, not interested, all those things. But I'll give you two things. One, I just got the book a few days ago and my life is a little busy and hectic right now. I have a new puppy, work is crazy, all of that sort of thing. So I just started reading the first 30 pages within the last, 30 minutes or so. And already I'm hooked into wanting to continue reading to the end. It'll probably be done by tonight. It's not a massive book either. So it feels like a fun read, and you're getting to see life through the eyes of other people who are doing homesteading. So kind of manage that wall that may have just come up, bring it down about halfway, and let's just take a peek over before we close it off altogether.
I love that.
So, Elizabeth, let's go back. Let's go back early years. Elizabeth, who clearly had sort of a drive to get into alternate medicine, if you will. What was that like? What was the, what was young sort of teenage Elizabeth's draw to that? And maybe that didn't even exist then. Like maybe it came later. What's that story?
Yeah, it didn't exist then. Western medicine, as we know it, failed me terribly as a child. This was during the time that doctors were giving out antibiotics like candy. And so I had bronchitis and digestive issues from a very young age. I was a pretty sick child. And my parents had HMO, which is managed care here, and it was not managed well. And so you'd get a different doctor every time, and they would every 3 months, I was getting more antibiotics. They never mentioned anything about nutrients. So as a latchkey kid, a lot of our food was very nutrient deplete. I grew up on Pop-Tarts and big, gigantic bowls of cereal, and my parents were doing the best they could while working all day. But I am one generation away from homesteading. And that happens a lot with people in the modern Western world, because in America, we have a lot of immigrants. And my mom and her sisters and my grandparents immigrated from Belarus as war refugees in World War II.
Okay.
And so I had always, and this will actually tie into becoming a homesteader, a modern homesteader. I had always heard stories of famine, not enough food, and I was lucky to never experience that. My grandmother, when she got here, they were like indentured servants. So a farmer paid for their ticket to come over, and then they were indentured to that farm for years and years, and they couldn't get out of debt because the farmer was charging them rent, and then they were working, and it was a messy process. And there was a Russian Orthodox church in New Jersey and on the East Coast that bought their ticket out, bought their freedom. They kind of all pulled together and bought their freedom. And as soon as they got to New Jersey, they got some land and immediately got a cow and chickens and started raising their own tiny little bit of livestock and growing their own vegetables and fruit. Now, when I was little, all I remember is going to grandma's house and picking like delicious gooseberries. That's all I remember because we were pretty disconnected from that. Both of my parents were career people and they believed that you do whatever the doctor says. So lots of cavities later, lots of bad gut issue later. In my 20s, I met my husband and he said, you know, I've heard of some alternative things for chronic bronchitis and you might want to try them. And so we did. Neither one of us were practitioners at the time. We were just trying herbs. And I actually won't mention the herbs because the herbs that I used were not in balance. Like I wasn't a practitioner. So I just was using these herbs. It was creating too much heat. It had some other side effects. And so I want to be really clear that when you're using herbs medicinally, like you're taking capsules of something and you're taking a lot of it in it, and somebody said in a magazine that it will help, you always want to make sure that you've read up on what the side effects are and make sure that your body can take care of that. But the long and the short of it was I then had a 20-year span where I didn't have antibiotics. Like I never needed antibiotics. If I had a chest cold, I would figure out a way to do it with whole foods and herbs. About 10 years into that, I decided I've many jobs over the years and many careers, but I went from a job that wasn't fulfilling and I said I needed something fulfilling and stable. And I think healthcare is the way to go. I really like being of service. I have been able to heal myself, you know, just kind of blindly trying new things. And I wanted to figure out a way to help heal others. And quite honestly, I was in my 30s and I wanted to be able to do something that I could do until I was 80 or 90 or 100. And putting needles, little tiny needles that are just the size of 2 or 3 hairs, was a really good way for me to do that. Like I knew that my body could do that. And so that's why I started acupuncture. It was practical. I took a year, interviewed a bunch of different doctors, nurse practitioners, physical therapists, occupational therapists. And when I got to an acupuncturist, it made more sense to me. The biggest premise is in Chinese medicine is that the body knows how to heal itself. We just need to help it a little. And so I've taken that farther with nutrient dense food. So I've always had a desire for, it was kind of an unconscious desire. I knew that having lots of drugs in my system wasn't actually going to help me. It was, maybe it would stop the symptoms, but I kept getting it. And then when I had this light bulb moment and tried this herb and suddenly I was off antibiotics, and I'm not to say that I'm anti-antibiotics, like if they're needed, go for it. You know, Western medicine is really good. If you have a heart attack, you break your leg and you need some help. Absolutely. But I didn't need it in that case. And so that kind of opened my eyes to a different type of world that was available and that there were lots of other people that were healthy without needing to go to the doctor every 2 to 3 months.
Wow. So I have to pop back real quick because something that you said totally like sent my brain into this whole spiral.
Okay.
We're going back to your grandparents, right? Coming from Belarus on a work. Was it a work or how did you phrase it?
Well, I said it was indentured servitude, which it wasn't called that back then, but someone paid for their ticket and then they had to pay off that debt with their work, with their labor.
There was a cycle of never getting out of debt because I'm so, like so now I get what you just said, but that's a polite way of almost saying like that's a form of slavery.
Yes.
Like,
and if you want to read more about that, I don't have any books that I know about that from that era, but Cesar Chavez worked a lot on that. There's some great biographies of him, and it was happening again with the Mexican population where they would be promised a lot of things. So it happened in the Dust Bowl area. It happened in World War II. And then it's still happening to this day. They're saying, come on over, you're going to get plenty of work. And then they are never getting out of debt because they're paying for in my parents' case, they were housed by the farmers, but the farmers were charging them rent that was always going to keep them in debt. They were never going to be able to step outside and own their own farm or have a job outside of the farm.
That is absolutely crazy to even hear. Not why we're here today, but like just processing that information. So I will actually check that person out.
Yeah.
So when you were describing when you were a kid and being sickly, I'm like, oh my gosh, she's me. Because that was me. I didn't have bronchitis, but I was a sickly child. Um, my parents were, well, my mother specifically wasn't very pro doctor, but also
Mm-hmm.
not pro herb either. She was
Mm-hmm.
just like, the Lord will fix it, sort of thing. So you met your husband in your 20s. You in your 30s, you decided that you weren't feeling fulfilled. You had
Mm-hmm.
gone, so many years without needing antibiotics. You were doing this sort of trying out new things, being adventurous, if you will, playing
Mm-hmm.
with like herbs and seeing how your body interacted with them and what you got out of it, and nutrient
Mm-hmm.
rich foods. So they then began your journey as an acupuncturist.
That's
But if I'm
correct.
not wrong, I read on the form that you have a master's of science in acupuncture and oriental medicine.
That's correct. So it's a lot of herbal pharmacy and acupuncture. And then traditional Chinese medicine is quite extensive because the country of China is huge.
Hmm.
And when this was before the Chinese Revolution, is when most traditional Chinese medicine began and was formed. And it was formed in different regions. So you'll often hear someone talking about herbs from the mountainous region, which do completely different pattern recognition than the herbs in maybe the drier, warmer areas, because there weren't trains and planes. You didn't, they kind of grew up in their own ecosystems. And so Chinese medicine is so vast that when someone says, I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine, it could be anything. It could do feng shui, which is organizing your home and helping there be more qi movement. And in my case, it's organizing the body and just helping the body to heal itself.
Wow, I find that's extraordinarily fascinating. Also, did not know that there were uh, university programs for sort of acupuncture. Never mind master's programs as well, right? Like this is very new to me, all new subject material. So I love this. And you have seen over 50, you've given 15,000 treatments because you've been treating over 15,000 treatments. You've
Yeah.
been treating patients for over a decade, correct?
Yeah.
And your focus is on mental health and well-being. Talk about
Mm-hmm.
that.
Well, I think that when I first went into the clinic, I had always had uh, an interest, a curiosity in mental health and wellness, and how stress related illnesses can be caused by mental illness, and also that the body can create, like an imbalance in the body can create mental illness. And so when I first started in my clinic training, and by the way, so many people don't know that acupuncturists are masters in science. Many people think that it's akin to a certification like a massage therapist or even a nutritionist that has like 1 or 2 years. It's a 4 to 5 year master program. And you can't work in California if you don't have the master degree.
Oh,
With
wow.
that being said, I am a bit of an iconoclast, and I don't know that it's necessary. I think if you apprentice for a year or two with someone, I think you can learn a lot more than what you learn in higher education. I think that higher education has failed us. I feel like I'm a little negative today, but I don't mean to be. I'm just being honest
Honest
because
is good, though.
I think people are thinking, oh, you've got all these alphabets after your name, so you must know more. And I will say that stepping into higher education and seeing that they don't necessarily make you a wiser person unless you work really hard to be a wiser person, and unless you work really hard to stay connected to basic truths. You can hide in higher education. So just putting that aside, like, I think it's important that people know that there's a master's of science available, and that I'm trained, and that I have years of experience, and I could be an absolute idiot and still have those degrees. And people don't realize that. Like, you could totally be not someone that you want to follow. So I always say, when you're getting to know an expert, right, that you really check in with what your body feels about what they're saying. And I love what you said about, like, people are going to think, when we're going to get to talking about the homesteading, but people are going to put up a wall and be like, that's not me. I'm not mom, pot kettle. And if you can just stop, get curious, and then really kind of settle into your body. Like you said, oh, I was sickly too. I get that. And so you're already you're putting me in categories, like someone that's been ill before, she's healed now. Like, and it sounds like she's pretty true. I think that our intuition is very strong. I think folks are very capable of reading body language and people's voices and knowing when they're a little off center or if they're not telling the truth. And so I just want to welcome your listeners kind of getting quiet and going, okay, the things that she's saying, how do they feel in my body? And I say this a lot to my patients as well, because when we're struggling with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, these things feel like they're bigger than our body a lot of times. Like the
Mm-hmm.
anxiety is making me crawl out of my skin and everything feels unsafe. But when you really check in, anxiety cannot be bigger than you. Like you are the container. And so the way that I kind of ask people to check in with that, like a lot of times, not a lot of times, but when I'm dealing with patients with post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, if they get triggered, and it's, you know, it can be for anything, but if they get triggered during one of our sessions, I often have them get into the five senses. And what that means is I'll say, what do you see right now? And they'll say, well, I can see your nose because you're sitting right in front of me, or I can see the light or the lamp. And then I say, okay, can you feel your hands on the table? Or can you feel your hands where you're sitting? Yes, I can feel my hands where I'm sitting. And then we go down each of the five senses, and it just slowly brings them back into their body because
Grounding.
yes, it's absolute grounding. And it doesn't always work, but it really helps if you're with someone that's safe. And so we're just kind of helping people recognize that the anxiety, the depression, the PTSD, for the listeners that are listening and have been like me, where I'm, you know, face down in the dirt, feeling like I can't move forward. It is not bigger than you. And all you need is 50.0000001% of you to have a willingness to change for you to create massive change in your life.
I love this. So there's two things that are coming up
Mm.
for me, and I have a goldfish brain, so I'm going to try and get them out. So one, I want to say, I love, no, I'm going to say this one first because I feel it's more important. The part about not being bigger than you, like
Mm.
you are the container.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I think I have innately known that, but I
Mm.
have not had words for that.
Mm-hmm.
And just now when you said it, I couldn't help but find that I was smiling because you put words to my truth, right?
Mm.
I do know that all of the sometimes crazy things that happen on the inside are contained within, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that I also know that everything that you're saying when it comes to checking in, grounding, realizing that the 50.00001% of you wants to change,
Mm-hmm.
that's enough to completely reshape your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it has, differently than perhaps you or other people, but it definitely has. And then the other thing is, I wanted to go back because um, the the comment that you said about the intuition, because
Mm.
you are absolutely correct. There are tons of people out there with BAs and masters and PhDs
Mm-hmm.
and this graduate certification and this credential and all of those particular things, and they are like a bag of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a terrible thing to say. I'm proud that they've gone to do the higher education, but what I have seen in my life is that they know how to read and memorize books well,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When they come out, and you said something else about watching how they stand in how they sit, they say what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
If when I'm talking to someone and if they feel scripted, because a lot of these times they're a little scripted, it's like
Mm-hmm.
canned responses and or textbook explanations, I get super
Mm.
suspicious about that, because
Mm.
I'm like, okay, but I'm like, that's interesting that you said that, and this makes sense. It tracks for me, but what's your experience with this?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right, like um, knowing that you have your masters, but also when you're describing your life, those I think neurons or connections are being made where there's an inherent trust. Okay, this person actually seems to really know what they're talking about, and
Mm-hmm.
you're standing in that sort of authority but not in a condescending or taking up way too much space kind of way, if you know what I mean.
I do.
So yeah, so that's great call outs for people. Education does not always mean excellence and or that you are proficient in what you do. Same is true in the corporate world, right? See it every day. So, because I'm in the corporate world as a consultant, and I'm like, how did you get this job? I'm like, and better yet, I'm like, how do you retain it? Like what? Like what's happening? But okay, so I love this grounding. I love the container part. I want to talk about homesteading because so that was your transition, right? Like you got to acupuncture, and then but you said something else. Yes, that's exactly what it is. Sorry, Piper, I just dropped the book in you.
Poor puppy.
You accidentally became a homesteader. So what I'd like to do real quick is we'll take a quick break. And when we get back, I want to talk about how that happens.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Partner today with CK Sims and Poddin My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. This spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
Welcome back, everybody. Before the break, we have been talking to Elizabeth Bruckner. She is the author of the Homesteader Mindset, and we've been discussing her life leading up to becoming an acupuncturist and lots of wonderful insights and wisdom shared. So if you didn't see it before, you got to go back and watch it for sure. Now we're actually going to focus on, the book will be a part of it, but I want to understand how one accidentally becomes a homesteader.
It's a great question. So we talked about my education and my medical practice. And in the clinic, I was practicing a lot of what I preached. I was also a vegetarian and I outsourced a lot of my food. What that means is I didn't know how to cook because I had never been taught. And I had this idea that if you were busy like me, you wouldn't have time to cook either. Like if you were busy like me, you obviously wouldn't have time to worry about that. So I would buy expensive, organic, processed food, lots of things in boxes. And I would look at the label and the label seemed pretty good. And then I, after 27 years of being a vegetarian, got really, really sick. I had a chronic illness, which left me bedbound for weeks, homebound for months, and unable to work for years. And when I woke up from that, I recognized that number one, my body needed meat. It needed to have healthy, well-maintained meat, meaning that it was it was cruelty-free. It was not in a feedlot. It cost a little more, but it was real food. There's a movement in the United States and probably in other countries too, called the regenerative agriculture movement. And what they're doing is they're creating livestock and food based on what nature does naturally. So they're moving their cattle every day to a different pasture and they're allowing the grass to grow back and they're having chickens come over and eat the cow patties and the insects that are in the cow patties. And so now the chickens are getting they're just living their best life, but they're also incredibly healthy animals and it's an incredibly healthy farm. And one example of this that I absolutely love is Polyface Farms in Virginia. So if someone is like, regenerative agriculture, let me look at that. Polyface Farms is one of them. For me, being ill, when I started to get well enough to do anything besides sleep and have a little bit of food, I realized, well, I want to be of service to my family. I want to be able to contribute, and I'm not able to work yet. So I'm going to start learning how to cook. And this sounds really silly because I was in my 40s. Like, who learns to cook in 40s? And I wasn't Julia Child. I was not going to be basting anything, or, I didn't even know what sauteing was. I just wanted to find a few meals that were ingredients that I knew what they were and I knew where they came from, and they had 3 steps or less. So I learned how to bake a chicken, and I always recommend to people, if you don't know what to do, bake a chicken. I have one baking now. It's life's incredible fast food. You bake it, and now you have about 4 different meals. You can have chicken, and then you could have sandwich, and then you could have salad, and then you could have soup. I mean, it's just incredible. And then you can use the carcass to make meat stock. So it started with just getting a few easy meals on the table because I was still chronically ill. The next thing that happened is I got this idea about fermentation, lacto-fermentation, which is when you take salt and water, you put some vegetables in it, you let it sit on your countertop for a few days, you pop the cork, the lid every day, and in 7 days you have pickles. And the scientific part of my brain really loved hearing about the fact that fermented vegetables have like 12 times the vitamin content of the raw vegetables. So that was blowing my mind. And then on top of that, you've got all these little tiny microbes in there that are eating, they're eating the vegetable. So the salt inhibits the bacteria that's going to make it rot, but it allows lactobacillus to flourish, and that is going to pre-digest your food. So then I'm thinking about, wow, so these foods are pre-digested. It's kind of like I already chewed them a little, and now I'm going to put them in my body, and they're going to be easier for my chronically ill body to digest. And then the last thing that was really cool is in just 1 teaspoon of homemade sauerkraut, you have more probiotics than an entire bottle of your $58 fancy probiotic that you buy at the health food store. And so these things were just fascinating to me. So I was reading lots of books when I had enough energy. I was reading lots of books on what is this fermentation process? What does it do to my body? What does it do to my gut? And from there, I remember being super excited. And then 2020 hit. And it was kind of a bummer because I was just starting to feel better. And I remember it was like, we're going to all shelter in place. And I'm like, well, I've kind of been sheltering in place for quite some time being chronically ill. So it was a little bit of a bummer, but it was fine. And the moment that I felt really unsafe, and this goes back to having family members that are war refugees and it being in my DNA, is I go to the supermarket and the shelves are empty. Like people have panic bought stuff. And we didn't have any food in our pantry or, we just didn't think about those things. I live in the suburbs. So I live next to 20 supermarkets. They couldn't all be empty, but they were. And when I couldn't find organic ginger or organic garlic, I panicked because those are 2 herbs in Chinese medicine that are really good for respiratory issues. They're really good for boosting your immune system. Now I didn't have my medicine, I didn't have my food, and it felt uncomfortable. And it was reminding me of those empty shelves and the starvation that my mother had told me about and so many times. And so my DNA kicked up and my husband said, well, maybe we should consider growing our own food. Why don't you consider growing your own food? And I'm like, do you know who you're talking to? Like, we've been married for 15 years. I kill everything. I don't know if you know this, but maybe some of your listeners do. There's this plant called the morning glory. It's amazing. It will take over your garden if you plant it. It grows like a weed where we live. I have killed that and everything else that I bought before then. So I was in the habit of going to the garden store and saying, please, can you give me something that won't die? And then killing it in 2 weeks and then going back and saying, that one didn't work. You're obviously not giving me the right plant. Can you please give me something that don't die? It was just again and again and again. And then I started looking up online. So at this point I had been learning languages with YouTube. I followed and then eventually worked for a polyglot named Benny Lewis, which we should definitely talk about. And he taught me how to speak languages in my 40s after failing 10 times. But what he also taught me was that you can learn a lot of stuff on YouTube. But before this, I thought YouTube was for cat videos, which I have nothing against them, but you're not going to learn much, and makeup tutorials. And I'm not all that into doing makeup. I didn't realize that you basically have mentors online, kind of like your Grampian guy, the host, the guest that you had recently. Like you have these people that know what they're doing and are happily sharing their information for free. And so I delve into gardening. And what I learned is fermentation, sustainable living, like getting rid of plastics, getting rid of fast food, ditching your microwave, reusing things, making your own cleaning vinegar, cooking traditional foods, and growing your own food. All of this were different spokes of this thing called homesteading. So let's step back just a second. What is homesteading? Is it, I don't know if you ever watched Little House on the Prairie, CK, but that was a big show when I was growing up, right?
Yeah.
Ma and Pa Kettle, whatever they were called. But they, were fighting off bears with rifles, and they were making their homemade clothes. And yeah, that was homesteading back then. And in around 1862, there was a series of homesteading acts in America where the federal government granted 270 million acres of land to private owners. Some of them were the Ma and Pa Kettles from Little House on the Prairie. A lot of them were rich getting richer. So it wasn't the best deal, but there was a few that got their 40 acres and a mule. And those people are what we consider homesteaders. Modern homesteading is someone that looks like me. I have no homemade clothes. I didn't even know how to cook, just a few years ago. And I live in the suburbs. You can be in an urban area, the suburbs, rural area. You can have disabilities. You can be chronically ill, and you can still homestead because there's many spokes to that wheel. It's really this movement, which has become trendy. I didn't write the book because it became trendy. I wrote the book because I love teaching what I learn. But I'm just lucky that it's becoming trendy right now. But this movement is finding an intentional way of living, finding a sustainable, healthy way of living. And the book talks about small implementation of small daily tasks to do that.
That's what got me hooked, actually, right away, right? Because
Yeah.
and the reason I addressed it right away when I said it, when I came in, was because when I saw the book, I'm like, oh, it looks really pretty, but I'm like, homesteading, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started reading the book and read the part one, and then started reading the stories of Sarah and Jim.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Tamara.
Mm-hmm.
Tamara, yes. And then Lucy and
Mitch.
Mitch, exactly. And I'm like, geez, this is really great. Like, I'm enjoying these stories. And what I love about the beginning of the book, and I'm totally going to finish reading it because I think I'm going to take so much away from it, is that neither one of those individuals drastically or immediately changed much of anything, really, if you want to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But how the small changes led to greater fulfillment and greater pieces. And, you're talking about YouTube. And YouTube is like life's university, essentially. Like, you could go there and people will mentor, teach you, you'll learn everything. So a few weeks ago, well, it was April 12th, so April 13th, I had purchased these two little kits. My best friend was coming for a week. Two little kits on Amazon. And I wanted to learn to crochet. I just always wanted to learn. So we get the kits, and they're made in China, of course, and the directions are not so great, and we're kind of like just figuring out. So we go over to YouTube, and we find, I feel like her name was Tara, and she's this beautifully bright woman, and she's very good at like teaching, and she taught us like all the different stitches and that sort of thing. And then, this is how good YouTube is, because this blanket that you see right here, I made myself.
No, in 2 weeks?
In 2 weeks.
This is your first crochet project? I'm a crocheter, so I am super impressed.
It's my first crochet project. Now, all fairness, I have been sewing, which I don't know if that really does make a difference.
No, it's completely different.
I always wanted to do it. So like, I'm really attracted to, and we're going to talk about this as well, but like, I'm really attracted to grandma's life. Does this make sense to you? Like, does that resonate? Because so to me, like, I have my puppy. I just recently purchased this recliner because it's a walker. And I'm like, this is the life I want. I want to sit and do crochet with my puppy on one side,
Oh.
rocking and making beautiful blankets that I'll give away. This one was for
Hmm.
me because I wanted it to match my living room. But yes, it was my first project, and it's because of YouTube,
I'm
right? And then,
thoroughly
like,
impressed.
thank you. I appreciate that a lot. But it was at the end, I was like, okay, well, I wanted a nice binding for the end. So I went and
Hmm.
found the crab stitch. I'm like, ooh,
Hmm.
this one looks hard. But then I found another one that does it forward way,
Hmm.
which allows you to maintain more tension. And I was like, huh, let's try that one out. It seems a little easier. So that's what we did. So yeah, YouTube is wonderful. But so it didn't happen overnight.
No,
There were things that led to it.
no.
The fermentation thing really actually interests me
Hmm.
because lactobacillus.
Hmm.
Um, I always thought, just this is me being just ignorant, I guess, that it was a lactose, a
Mm.
dairy
Mm.
thing,
Hmm.
but it's not.
No. Mm-mm. It's different. As a matter of fact, when you're when you're fermenting when you're fermenting vegetables, it's salt and water. When you're fermenting dairy, like cream or milk, you're using cultures. And so you can use a yogurt culture or you can use kefir, which is really pronounced kefir, but I can never remember because we all say kefir where I live.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so those two things are what create but what they do, especially in kefir, but also in the culture, the yogurt culture, is they eat the lactose. So if someone's listening and they're like, I love yogurt, but I can't have it because I'm lactose intolerant, you might want to try creating your own yogurt, which is very, very simple. It's just letting it sit for 48 hours with a little bit of the culture in it or the kefir grains. You just leave it on your counter. And then what it does for 48 hours is different than store-bought yogurt. So store-bought yogurt, they usually ferment it for like 4 to 8 hours because time is money, right? So they want to get that yogurt out. And that has a
Hmm.
great deal more lactose, which is a particular sugar that is in milk. But they also have a protein called casein. And so a lot of people are actually allergic to the casein. It's too difficult to digest and they think it's lactose. And when you 48-hour ferment your milk products, you actually digest a lot of both of those. So I, for example, will get a migraine if I eat just at this time because I'm in a gut healing protocol. I get a migraine if I have just milk on its own. But if I lacto ferment, I can have it every day, and I do because I lacto ferment it for 48 hours.
We could be here until
I
next
know.
Tuesday.
I know. I'm such a nerd. I could seriously
No, but
talk
I
to you about
love
all
this.
this.
I love
I
this.
want to
Like this,
like hang out and crochet with you, and maybe there's a second rocking chair I can chill with.
absolutely. Well, I'll just buy one and we'll fly you up. But so this is really interesting. So
Mm.
vegetables, because one thing I do love is sauerkraut,
Hmm.
and you're saying salt water and is cabbage cabbage.
Yeah. So and sauerkraut's even easier. It does take a lot of chopping. So if you have a food processor, just throw it in the food processor and get it all mushy. Then you put it in a big bowl. You put a bunch of salt on it. You mix it with your hands, just like you would, like, let's say you were going to serve it with salt, right? You just put a ton of salt in. I think usually I just sprinkle to taste, but maybe you could do like for an entire cabbage head, you would do like a half cup of salt. Then
Okay.
you leave that bowl overnight. And overnight, it's going to break it down. Then you take it, you put it in a mason jar, you smush it down with your hand, and then you close the mason jar with the lids that are typical canning lids. They kind of pop. You just close it with that, and then every day you burp it. You just open it up, let the air come out, and then you close it back up again because the microbes are creating gases and you have to release
Mm,
those gases. And I like to put that in a small bowl because sometimes the water that the cabbage creates will spill over. The cool thing about if you love sauerkraut, you are in for a treat when you do this, CK. You can now eat that within 7 days, but a lot of times it's kind of a little more tough. I You can also let it sit on your counter. So I had one red cabbage sauerkraut that I had sit on my counter for 7 months. And it was the most mild, delicious. So I put a layer, like I used a leaf of the cabbage to just push it down and kind of protect it. And then in 7 months, I picked up the leaf. That was really gross and slimy because it was partially aired and partially underwater. So I pulled that out. My husband's like, that is nasty. I'm never going to eat it. And then he had some of the cabbage and he's like, this is the most amazing mild cabbage I've ever had. It was soft because it had been so digested. And so we usually do 4 heads of red cabbage, 4 heads of white cabbage. And I do 2 separate gigantic, they're gallon mason jars, and I do them for, whatever months. And then we eat them. It takes quite some time because we put them in the fridge. And when you put them in the fridge, they're preserved with the salt. So you can have them in your fridge for months. So you're going to love making your own cabbage.
And a red cabbage sauerkraut. That
it's
sounds
so good.
Delicious.
It's so good. And in Chinese medicine, it's really good for blood and your heart because it's red, and red connects with blood in Chinese medicine. So it's just a really nice blood tonic. And it's got all the probiotics. It tastes delicious with sausage and some mustard. I mean, it's amazing. It's the stuff that you pay a lot of money for when you go to Strasbourg or Munich, Germany to get what they have, except this is real food. It's not made with vinegar.
I love that too. Like it's not the vinegar based sauerkraut, which is very hard to find in stores. Right?
Yeah.
And so you had mentioned earlier that 1 tablespoon.
Yes. 1 teaspoon. Tiny.
1 teaspoon has more
probiotics
than a whole bottle of our $50.
Yeah. Isn't that insane?
Well, I know one thing's definitely coming from this. Like this weekend, I am making a sauerkraut because I've suffered my whole life with stomach issues. And now what's interesting is I've gone for Western medicine, of course. Lactose is an allergy for me, not an intolerance, an allergy. It causes spasms and bleeding. Maybe it's the casein, who knows? But we're not sure. But so I am a strict subscriber. That's not true. That's a lie. I don't want to lie to anybody. I'm a strict subscriber to lactose-free products, like dairy products. However, I do tend to cheat a little and can manage, like if someone's offering me a piece of cake, I'm not saying no. Right? It's 1 piece of cake. So, but yeah, and I do love cake. But okay, so in this book, you have recipes. I haven't gotten there yet, but you mention in the beginning of the book that there are recipes.
There's not a lot. I've actually been yelled at and they want more. So I think I might make a workbook with way more recipes. Because I thought, who wants recipes? But apparently listeners love it. Readers love it.
Well, I mean, if you think about in this moment, and like, I know, okay, here's another thing. The best friend that I was talking about here is going to watch this. And I have a memory of a couple of years ago, him making his own sauerkraut. And I think I refused to eat it.
Why?
Because I think I was like, oh my God, that's gross. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, I just, it wasn't like a, like, oh, let's try it out type thing.
Yeah.
And he would be someone I would consider close to a homesteader, but not a homesteader, right? And he's going through herbology right now. Like that's what he wants to do, is become an herbologist.
Cool.
And so maybe I need to listen to him more when he tells me things.
You should listen to him.
But I guess we tend to like discount some of the things our friends tell us, you know.
A prophet in his own land. I do want to say, CK, before we go forward, just when you do the sauerkraut, be really careful because it's real food that you haven't had before or in a very long time. So start with a half teaspoon and see how your body responds. Sometimes people can have like a histamine response. So just start slow and then your body will acclimate. Your body loves real food, but it might taste delicious and you want to eat a whole cup of it. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that with the fermented yogurt either. Take your time. And this is for the listeners as well that get excited. Take your time helping your body acclimate to these nutrient dense foods.
I just want a hot dog with it on.
Oh,
like, do you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
so like
I
hot
do.
dogs processed, I get it. The bread too. But like if I can put some probiotic sauerkraut on top of that, like that's fantastic, right?
That's exactly right.
Yes, I would. I'm a very cautious person when trying new
New
things.
things.
Like
Good.
weirdly, I'll tell you this,
Mm.
and he rolls his eyes at me and thinks it's in my head. I can't eat raw garlic.
Mm.
It makes me feel very nauseous and
Mm-hmm.
sick.
Mm-hmm.
So it has to be cooked,
Mm-hmm.
and then I can have it without having issue. Now I love ginger at sushi, but it's processed. I know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can eat ginger. I eat a lot of ginger when I go for sushi, but then I always have stomach issues after. Now, mind you, we're having this conversation, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, well, am I feeling nauseous because my body is like, what are you giving me? This is actually real,
Mm.
and I don't know how to handle it, or am I? Like, does it make sense that I would say? Have you heard? Is this something that?
Yeah. Okay. So a few things. The first thing is I would recommend fermenting your garlic and putting it in your fridge and just seeing what raw garlic fermented because it's pre-digested. So it's basically cooked, but it's cooked in a fermentation way. And you can also ferment your ginger. You can slice up some thin ginger. It's very yummy to ferment your own ginger and ferment onions taste really good. I don't know if they have it up east in Canada, but where I grew up, they had hoagies, submarines where they put onions that were like soaked in vinegar. This has a better taste because it's real food. Going back to, and then fermented garlic is pretty remarkable because it changes so fast in your body, fermented garlic, that it actually fights and wins a lot of battles with antibiotic resistant bacteria like MRSA. If you have fermented garlic, it will help fight that off because the antibiotic resistant MRSA kind of knows what the antibiotic is going to do, and so it changes to in response to that, and it can't do that with garlic. Fermented garlic changes too fast for it. So I would consider that. Another good thing about having fermented garlic in your fridge is you can still cook it. You just peel it, you put it in like you're fermenting it, you do it 7 days, you put it in your fridge, and now you've got these garlic cloves that are already peeled. So when you want to cook something fast, it's quick prep and it's delicious. So in terms of raw garlic, it's very heating. In Chinese medicine, it's a very strong, potent herb. So I would be careful with it. If your body, it doesn't necessarily mean that your body is going, oh my gosh, I'm allergic to this, but it might be that your gut is not yet healed enough to handle something that strong. And so
Hmm,
if you're interested in gut health, I'm all about books. I'm such a little book nerd, but there's a great
I
book
love
called
books too.
Okay, exactly. Gut and Physiology Syndrome by Dr. Natasha Campbell. She is a neurologist and a trained nutritionist that healed her child of some pretty difficult neurological issues, and she did it through gut health. And then she started healing her patients, and patients were like, "Oh, I've healed diabetes, or I've healed chronic fatigue," and so she wrote a book about it, and it talks all about gut health. So my guess is that uh, your gut is just not happy with it because your gut might be a little too fatigued from other things, and the components of garlic are seeping into your bloodstream before they're supposed to. So when we talk about leaky gut, there's just pockets of our intestines when it's not healthy, and I'm healing my gut. So I'm talking from experience. I'm not saying like, oh, my gut is so much shinier than yours, CK. Like obviously I can handle garlic. That's not the case. Like I was really sick and my gut was really, everything was clouding my brain. And so what I recognized that even good things didn't feel good because my body was kind of not digesting it, instead letting it float all over and giving me joint pain and neurological issues that were really serious.
I am fascinated by the gut brain, gut health, sort
Mm-hmm.
of how it affects our bodies, our mental health,
Mm-hmm.
all of those things. And I would have to say, I mean, I think mentally in life now I'm in a really great place where I wasn't always.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do treat my body pretty poorly when it comes to eating an inflammatory diet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm diabetic and a smoker.
Okay.
No, it's like, ugh. But the interest is, and what I like actually about this book so far is that some of the things that you've talked about so far, they're just really easy to implement.
Yes.
And then what you're saying to me is that you were also in the same sort of headspace where you wanted like 3 step meals,
Yes.
essentially. It's because like where I'm a single dude. I mean, I have my baby, which is a puppy, as I told you. Um, so I love to cook for others, but for
Hmm.
some reason, there's such a block when it comes to cooking for myself.
Yes.
Um, so I'm definitely going to research fermenting more
Hmm.
because, like, this all sounds very fascinating to me. Like fermented ginger, onions. Now I want to try that.
So good.
And this is just with salts.
Just salt and water. So I don't know that I think I put this in the book, but in case you can't find it, you take 2 cups of water, 1 tablespoon of salt. So actually, you don't need a half cup of salt in your sauerkraut. That would be way too much. So 2 cups of water, 1 tablespoon of salt will do a brine that you mix up and then you can put your veggies in it. And I also want to note that being a smoker is an advantage for you. And I'll tell you why. Are you a regular smoker? Do you do morning, noon, and night or?
Hmm.
Okay. So you have a habit that's already created that you can add another habit to. And you'll see that in the book. So I want you to think about that smoking habit as one of the habits that you can habit stack and habit chain with. Habit stack is when you take a habit that you already have that's embedded in your routine and you add another habit to it. Habit chaining is when you take the habit that's embedded in your routine and you add a habit to it. For example, when I'm washing dishes, I'm listening to a podcast about growing herbs because that's maybe one of the things that I want to do. Or after I brush my teeth, I will then make veggie juice, and it just goes hand in hand. Or after I make my veggie juice, I will then just quickly prep my cream, my kefir cream, which takes like 2 minutes. So you can do that with when you're thinking about habits and like, I don't have enough time. You work in the corporate world, you've got a podcast, you've got a lot going on. So you need to find pockets of found time. And the way to do that, and the book will talk about this, but for you right now and for the listener as well, the way to do that is find the habits that you have, good and bad and indifferent. It doesn't matter what the habit is. That way you're not judging the habit, you're just using it to create a routine because willpower is finite. I'm going to be better on Monday. How many people have said that? In the book, I want to create a t-shirt that says Magic Mondays don't exist. So
Mm.
instead, routine. Routine is everlasting. And the book will walk you through how to create a routine around your smoking habit. And it may crowd out the smoking habit one day, it may not, but you will have a better way of living and your body will be healthier so that you can continue to live a long, healthy life, hang out with your best friend, and crochet in your rocking chair with your adorable puppy.
Well, and it's so interesting too because when I think about my life,
Mm-hmm.
actually, it is extraordinarily routine.
Mm.
7:30 at night, I take my my medication.
Mm-hmm.
From 7:30 to 10, I know that I have that 2.5 hour block to sit down, maybe watch a book, play with Piper, go sew something, now crochet something.
Mm-hmm.
Did I just say watch a book? I meant to say read a book or watch a show. I don't do much of the TV thing.
Yeah.
I go to bed at 10 o'clock every single night, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
usually up no later than 6 a.m. every single morning. I
Nice.
don't start work until 10:30 because my contract is out west, geez. So I love my slow mornings. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I wake up, I first thing I do, I take her to go to her spot.
Mm-hmm.
I have a cigarette. I come
Mm-hmm.
back in. I take my morning medication, use the bathroom, then I go make a coffee, come sit on the couch, play with her, drink my coffee, have my second coffee. So I'm very routine. Like this is my life,
Mm-hmm.
which most of the time I thoroughly love and enjoy, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I'm so boring. I'm only 44. Like, come on. But so I like the idea of um, habit stacking because these are habits. This
Mm-hmm.
routine is
It's already
ingrained in
there.
me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm I'm so excited about reading the rest of the book. And I've thoroughly loved this conversation.
Oh, me too.
It's been honestly, it's wonderful. I feel like I could have you back like on a series and be like, let's talk about this topic and
I
like
would love
what's your
that.
take on it. So the book is available for purchase online bookstores.
Amazon and anywhere else you can buy books.
Amazing.
And
And
I also have a gift for listeners. if you
Okay.
don't mind me telling them.
Of
It's
course.
a habit tracker, a homestead habit tracker. And so it discusses what we just talked about, how to create those goals that are actually doable, not these pie in the sky goals. And then I have a habit tracker that you can print out and you can start assessing and recording, because I believe that, and I think you've talked about this in some of your other episodes as a consultant, that you motivate people by acknowledging the successes that they've already done. And so
Absolutely.
that's what habit tracking is. You're acknowledging, like, look at how far I've come. You know, if I did it one day last week and I do it 2 days this week, I've doubled. And so the way to get that free gift is to go to www.createwellnessproject.com/gift, GIFT.
So I will link that
Okay.
in the description as well, so everybody can go there. Well, I'll link your website, so you have to listen to get the free gift.
Okay.
There you go.
Deal.
But yeah, so I have made an observation about you, Elizabeth,
I would love to
and
hear it.
I want to share it. Yeah. So um, as I said, so like I think what's really interesting is when I kickstarted this podcast, in the beginning, it was based out of like I have always wanted to have a show. Like one of my heroes is Oprah Winfrey. I watched her since I was like 6 years old. Loved watching her interact with her guests and do her show and have those connections. And I've always in my mind wanted to be a talk show host. Always, literally always. But fear prevented me from doing that, right? So 2023 corporate packaged out sort of changed things a little bit. And I was like, you know what? What if this is the universe removing a block? Because I've been so deeply wanting to do things that fill my cup. And so I decided to step out from behind fear. Always careful to make sure people understand that the fear is still there. It's just that I choose to work in partnership with it as opposed to let it roll my life. What's getting to my point, because I'm a little long-winded like my pastor dad, is when I first started out, I just wanted to have guests, right? And then I remember asking the universe one day, like, I need guests. I want to have guests. I want to connect. And then like, I don't know. It just happened very quickly. The next thing you know, I was in a situation where I was like, I had to turn people away. And I found myself like just a lot of guests. And whether they're quality, I never know until I sit and actually talk with them, because, you have to base off what they give you and all of those things. One thing I felt there was a lot of sort of people who have found become coaches, if you will, or self-proclaimed. And self-proclaimed is completely fine. Just there's not to sort of take that away at all. Just a lot of like new gurus and things like that. And there's a lot of it that's out there. And I always found like feeling slightly overwhelmed with that. So here you are, you come on. Yes, you have your master's in acupuncture, right? What I find with you is that you're deeply grounded and authentic in what you're saying and how you present your information. It feels authentic. It feels believable. Something that you can relate to. And the way you present your ideology and the stuff that you're talking about, you're using like everyday language and not euphemisms, I guess, the pie in the sky sort of thing, like regular language that people can relate to. And so I wanted to tell you that when I'm sitting here with you, we talked about this at the beginning of the episode where you trust your intuition, right? Like that's the divine gift that we're given. We can own it. You just seem like real, but not flashy, like to me. You know what I mean? Like sometimes I don't know if I'm articulating things correctly, but it feels deeply rooted and grounded. is what I'm trying to say. And it's a really beautiful experience to have the conversation with you and to learn things from you and to hold your book that I'm literally going to go finish reading this night. And now want to like plan fermenting things. So like you got me excited and you
Yay.
sparked things. And yeah, so for everybody listening at home, I hope that you too experienced some version of that and could tell for yourself that Elizabeth Bruckner is authentic, organic.
That's beautiful. I'm just soaking that all in. Learning to receive is an important part of giving. And so
Yes.
that's just a lovely gift that you gave me, CK. Thank you
Well,
so much.
I'm glad that I could give it to you. I am similar to you. I love to give. It's hard to receive.
Mm-hmm.
I am getting better because I've had no other choice. Um, I've had some pretty strong, wonderful female leads in my life who have just been like, listen, I'm like, you're uncomfortable in square me. Well, you're just going to have to get used to it. I'm like, okay, we'll just work on it. So what's next for you?
Wow. After this, I'm going to have some baked chicken because I'm hungry.
Yes, you
I
said
can
that was
smell it with the
baking.
little chipotle. And then I think that there are two things that are coming up. I'll be creating a course, an online course for healing chronic pain, because I think that's one of our biggest issues in America and the rest of the modern world is that we have a lot of pain and we're not able to really enjoy our lives. And then I think
Mhm.
that that is going to spin off into another book. I'm imagining there's going to be a 3-part series to homesteading, the Homesteader Mindset, and one of them is going to be the revolution that can occur in your kitchen in terms of healing your body.
I love this. One of my things that pops in my mind when you just said that too about the chronic pain is that there is this mindset. Speaking of mindsets, there's this mindset that exists in our world where people are living in chronic pain and they think that it's normal
Yes.
to live that way. Like because
Yes.
generationally we've heard, our grandmothers or our mothers or fathers or any of those people talk about, well, I have this, and
Mm-hmm.
it persists, and
Mm-hmm.
we know if I had something that was giving me chronic pain, let me tell you, I would bid on Blue Origin if I had to try and find an answer
Mm-hmm.
to it, because to be in pain is unnatural.
Yes.
Your body's trying to tell you something. Your body's trying to heal. You've harmed yourself. You're inflamed, or whatever the situation
Yes.
is. That is not normal, and you
No.
do not have to live that way. So
No.
I love that you're doing that program.
And I think also, just one more aside, because I don't think people see this if they're not healthcare practitioners. There's a lot of heartache in the world and there's a lot of pain in the world. And what I've noticed, I was always pretty compassionate and empathetic. But what I've noticed is that some of the biggest jerks that have come into my clinic were just lines with a thorn in their paw. And once I got them out of pain, they were kind, gentle people. And so I think about that when I'm at the store and I see someone that's grumpy, or I think about that when someone's, not as nice to me as always. I think, well, are they hurting? And I know from experience that if we can get someone out of pain, the world will be a better place. You will be your best self. You don't have to just push through.
Love this. And it makes me think of that saying that I am a firm believer in: hurt people hurt people.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Healed people heal people.
Wow. Yes.
And that's who you are, a healed person,
Yes.
healing others. Not completely healed. We know
I'm a
that you're
healing
working on your
person.
gut
Yeah.
health.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that healing is a journey.
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
And we have to, it's all about pacing.
Yep.
And you had said the habit tracker as a free gift.
Mm-hmm.
You just look at, like, where were you 6 months ago, right?
Yes.
Like, what was your pain level then? What was your
Yes.
quality of life? You can measure these things over the course of time.
And you don't wait. You don't wait until you're perfectly perfect, right? That's ridiculous.
Well, I don't believe that
Don't
that
share.
exists.
Don't wait to share your light. Share it now. Share whatever cracks of light you have.
Absolutely, I love this. So let me close it off so that you can have your baked chicken with chipotle. That sounds delicious. I want to thank you so much for being here for this book. It will be living on my shelf for the remainder of the year. I got a funny feeling it's not the last time we're going to have a conversation, though.
I hope so.
For everybody at home, make sure you head over to createwellnessproject.com. Lots of fun things there. Go get the book because, like I said, I'm 30 pages in. I kept my thumb in this book or my finger in this book this entire time, this entire interview, because the second we disconnect, I'm going back to be reading about the curiosity muscle that you had on page 30. So I want to, like, I'm hooked. I want to see it. And then if like you're on social media?
No, I might someday be. No, I went off social media about 2000. I don't know when I went off. When people got really angry, maybe 2016, 2015.
Oh,
this
is actually fair. Yeah.
I didn't want to play anymore, so I am no longer on. I think I have a Instagram that I might eventually bring up to share podcast interviews like this one, but you won't be able to reach me there. The only way to reach me is my website.
Well, that's perfect, and that's what we will do. Okay. We will send you the link for the podcast as well, because we want you to. Well, I want people to watch that because I think they can take a lot away from this particular episode. I don't do social media. I have it, but I have a lovely human who manages it for me.
Nice.
And that's a gift from the Lord above. Nice. There, right? The universe was, and you'll hear me say that a lot if you watch my podcast. I'm very much the universe and God because that's who I am. But they take care of it because I, like you, can't cope with the hate.
Yeah.
It's such a cesspool right now.
I have no interest.
I eat an inflammatory diet. I do not need to consume an inflammatory. I gotta give somewhere some breaks.
Yes.
So, all right. So everyone, like I said, go get the book, The Homesteader Mindset. I promise you will not regret it. You will enjoy it. Promise you. Also, createwellnessproject.com, and we're gonna look out for this program that you're gonna launch on chronic illness and the potentially new book. There's 2 coming, is what I heard.
That's right. That's what you heard.
2 coming. So, all right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I appreciate your time immensely.
Thank you,
everybody at home. Until next time, get out there and live your wildest dreams.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.